Hi, I'm Rick Dior. What you heard there was solo 150 from the Charles Wilcoxon book, The All-American Drummer. I've just completed today recording the entire book. Now I'm posting these over the last 2 weeks. I've been posting these, and I'll keep posting maybe 4 or 8 a day until we get to the end. It takes me a little time to put the titles in and whatnot. Usually when I was recording this, I did 1 or 2 takes and just took the best take. So they're definitely not perfect, but it's close, and I'm very familiar with the book, and I've used it for years and years. So as you know, I've been recording entire books for a long time here on YouTube. I've done all the Pratt books. I've done the other Wilcoxon book, Rudimental Swing Solos, as well as parts of other books, and I will be completing those. Also, I've done some drum set books, including recently Rick Latham's Advanced Funk Studies. So I'll continue doing that. I'll be recording all the books that I really love and that I think are important for drummers, mostly my students who I use these books with. Now, Wilcoxon, in my opinion, was probably the greatest rudimental composer because he was extremely innovative. And at the time this book was written, in the 40s pretty much. It came out in 45, but he probably was working on it for a really long time and compiled it together. That's my guess anyway. I don't have anybody who told me that. But I would think, that's the way I write and a lot of other people write. And I don't think he was going to go write 150 solos in 2 weeks. So probably that's what happened. Rudimental Swing Solos came out earlier, maybe 4 years earlier. And that, I know for a fact, was written over time. So he could have written some of these solos first and then just divided them up. Now that other book, Rudimental Swing Solos, is a lot different from this one. I think that's kind of his statement, his big statement on the state of rudimental drumming at the time. And of course, those solos can be played with more of a swing feel, as can these, although for the most part, most of these solos, I played them pretty straight, but some of them can be swung. Now, the big difference in this book from Rudimental Swing Solos is that there's lots and lots of solos in 6/8, almost half of them. And that's really great because it teaches you a different way to phrase and play different rudiments and accents and rolls. Now, the thing about these exercises that's so unique is that they start obviously very simple from solos 1 through 20, where he's just showing you the basic rudiments and piecing them together. Kind of similar to the beginning of Rudimental Swing Solos, where he has 4 or 5 pages of exercises. Here he presents them in the form of etudes, very short etudes, 2 per page. So you can go back and look at, solos 1 through 20. So those solos use a lot of basic stickings or rudiments, things that you would find in books like Nard, the William Ludwig books, the Haskell Harr books, the kind of easier rudimental books. That's what I consider them. And they're great for beginners, drummers, and stuff. This book, however, is not a beginning drum book. It starts simple, like I keep saying, and by the end, it's extremely virtuosic in its technique and control. Also, the tempos are very, very important. You can play some of these slow, but if you play them too slow, they don't work at all because of the way they're written, especially the 6/8 solos. So sometimes the rolls are written as open rolls. He writes that, and he puts a 13 in the space of a whole bar of 6/8. In that case, you have to play it pretty slow. Now, an example of this would be solo 147. So hopefully you have the book in front of you there. And I'll put that on the screen here so you can hear that whole solo. Just take 2 or 3 minutes and just watch that here for a minute. Now in the opening, we have this 13-stroke roll, but we're in 6/8. I did this solo at dotted quarter equals 85. So that sounds like this on the metronome. Now when you're practicing it, you might want to subdivide triplets like this. That will really help you as far as feeling the beat. But ultimately, you want to take that triplet out and be able to feel the pulse as a dotted quarter. So in other words, like it's in 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So in this case, that roll sounds like this. So that doesn't really sound like a roll, does it? But that's one way Wilcoxon writes rhythms, shorthand. And there's a lot of these kinds of things, which we'll be talking about today. So it says open 13 stroke. That's what that says here. You see it here on the screen. And some people might play it like this. But then it's not a 13-stroke roll. So you have to understand the way he writes things, okay? Now, right after that, we have some 7-stroke rolls, and those are more closed rolls. They're still double-stroke rolls, but they're much faster. 1, 2. So you see how that works. And these things are throughout the book. Now, sometimes he'll write long roll and then open. A good example of this, again, is in Etude 147, the third line, last 2 bars. So you might interpret that like this. Now eventually you want to take that pulsing out so it sounds like this. So the next kind of roll we need to talk about would be the crushed roll. So a good example of that is solo 148. If you just go right to the next page, the second to last stanza, the last bar, you have this 10-stroke roll. And Wilcoxon liked to do this a lot. And in this book, there's a lot of versions of this. Kind of like a 3 camps thing in a way. But this is extremely fast. So when I recorded this solo, I did it at quarter note equals 110. And of course, it's in 2/4. So the underlying rhythm is this. But you have to put a roll in between that, which is crazy fast. Now, I did the solo at 110 because I'm able to play that just one time. But if I had to do it many times over and over again, as in some of the other solos, I would definitely have slowed that down. So there's an example of one particular bar in a solo that causes you to refigure your tempo. And that's how I choose my tempos. I take the most challenging thing in the solo and I slow my tempo down to that. All right? No matter how slow you have to go, that's how you have to treat this book. And of course, you want to start all of them slow and build them up. I use all kinds of tempos when I record them. I just recorded them these last couple weeks for you guys. But most of them are at kind of almost my max tempo. All right, so that's probably a good guide for you all about how fast you should eventually be playing them. So slowly, if I had to play a lot of these in order, I could do it maybe at 100 and it would sound like this. All right, in my opinion, that's still a little too fast. It starts to sound kind of butchery, you know, where you're tightening up to have to play it. So again, then I'd slow down my metronome to maybe, 96 and see what that sounds like. That's much, much more manageable. And again, there's a few etudes in the book that he plays these things 2 or 3 or 4 in a row. So you want to be able to play those, okay? And you don't want to tighten up. So that would be your max tempo for that particular thing. But if it's 1 in a row and you can swing it, then you can go a little faster. Now, the other thing he does like that are these double drags. So it's a big Wilcoxon thing to do this. In this same solo, in the 5th stanza, first bar, he does this. So slowly, that sounds like this. And later on, 4 stanzas from the end, last bar, he does this. That's a single drag. So whenever you have these drags together with rhythms, the underlying rhythm is this. Need to make sure that that's a tempo that you can handle. And again, you don't tighten up to do it. So usually these things are maybe just 1 bar or 2 bars. And this is another tempo decider in Wilcoxon solos. So I hope that helps you with choosing the tempos. Because I've gotten a lot of emails since I started posting these about how I decide what tempos I play. And that's basically it. I take the hardest thing in the solo, see how I can play it pretty much relaxed, and then that's my tempo. Now he does use a lot of single stroke rolls as well, especially in the last several etudes where he calls them, Wilcoxon's 147th or 137th, things like that. He uses all the 26 rudiments. At that time, in the 1940s and 50s and 60s, those were the rudiments. There's 40 PAS rudiments now and a bunch of hybrid rudiments. But back then, there were just 26 that folks were using. So when you have these singles, you want to choose your tempo related to those as well, because in those last solos, he always uses those singles. Now let's talk about the flams. So there's different ways to interpret the flams. You could do them close. So certain etudes would have flams in order. So but other etudes have them kind of a little bit slower, where they're open. So my flam speed generally is determined by the tempo that we're playing. The faster the tempo, the more closed the flams. All right? Sometimes I use open flams to fill up space to make things sound a little funkier. So I definitely suggest that you try to do that. Play them a little open. The flams are the hardest things in this book to get right. It's real easy at the slow tempos to hit some flat flams. And once again, a flat flam is when both hands play together. And you hear how those cancel out on the drum. It sounds like kind of muted. The way to avoid that is with height. Those are closed. These are open. Okay, slower. So you see how that works. Faster, closed, slower, more open. The other thing are the stickings. You must treat these stickings as kind of the law. I think when I recorded all these, I did every single sticking as written in this book. There are no typos that I found sticking-wise. Now, there are things that are hard to play for sure, but I know that in rudimental swing solos, there are a few typos, and I pointed them out when I recorded those videos. But in this book, I did not find any at all. And, again, some are hard. So stick to these stickings. That's what's going to make you be able to play really, really well. I think that's it. That's all I wanted to say about these. But I really think these books are so great for increasing your vocabulary as a drummer. And I think they're extremely important. And of course, all my students always work through them. Maybe not the entire book because we're kind of pressed with time. But at some point, once you get going downhill, in other words, you have the basic technique, you can dive in and do all of these. And this is why they're important. So I hope you enjoyed this series and look for these in future weeks. Pretty soon, maybe a couple weeks from now, I'll post number 149 and 150 together, and you'll have all of them up on YouTube probably forever. All right. Take care and thanks so much.